Great time to do this. We did it before the season last year. Sheil Kapadia is going to come on. We're going to talk about the top 5 players at each position, the one that we can rank. I went through last year's rankings, by the way, too. Sheil was better at this than I was as I looked over these. He was very early on a couple guys where he was like this, and then that player ended up having a top 5 year. So we'll do some of that in a second, but Sheil's also part of our Ringer.com NFL coverage. You can see his latest trade value column that is up now. It just was updated today, and of course, part of all of the NFL podcasts that we're doing on the main feed. So good to see you, man. What's up?
Yeah, good to be here. 2 days away from the opener?
I know. I got excited this morning prepping all of it and running through it all. So before we do kind of our top 5 stuff, I do want to spend some time on the trade value deal here. Pretty self-explanatory, but you know what? Let's not do it for you. You're the guy that wrote it today. So run us through kind of your parameters for how you do this.
Yeah, it's Bill Simmons' classic idea with the NBA, bringing it to the NFL. And so the idea is rank the 75 players with the highest trade value right now. So if you have 2 players, you decide, well, which team would trade that player for the other guy? Or sometimes I just look at it, hey, if these 2 guys were available on the open market, who would bring back more in a trade? So you look at positional value, how good the player is, contract age is a huge thing in the NFL. When you just look at some of these guys who are great players, if they hit 30, the trade value is not there. So yeah, always an exercise where I do it. And then midway through the season, I'm like, oh my God, take that off the internet. That I completely screwed that up, but it's fun to do before the season.
Well, I don't think you'll worry about where you had number 1. Mahomes, 28 going into this season, his own tier. I don't even know how anyone could have a problem with that.
Yeah, that was easy. We gave him his own tier this year. It was just like there's literally no trade package you could put together where they even have a 2-minute meeting. Where I was thinking in the history of the NFL or since I've been alive, that's probably not the case for almost, even when like Brady and Manning, if those guys were available for each other, maybe you have a conversation theoretically. But yeah, Mahomes is in his own tier, no doubt.
Okay, so the next group here, how hard was it to figure out a cutoff line after Allen, Stroud, Burrow, and Lamar?
Yeah, it was tough. It was tough to know how high do I put Stroud after one season. I know you're big on that, and I'm sure we'll get to this in the top 5. Hey, don't crown him after one season. So your voice was kind of in the back of my head there a little bit, but I'm just all in on Stroud. I just think if on a rookie contract, if you offer him for some of these other quarterbacks who have been really good but are getting paid over $50 million per year, I think those teams at least would have a little meeting and say, should we do this? Is it easier to build our team? And then you mentioned it, that next group of quarterbacks, I have Jordan Love, Justin Herbert, Trevor Lawrence, and Jalen Hurts. And these are tough guys to slot because they don't have the accomplishments as the guys above them yet. I think that most of them are good quarterbacks that a lot of teams in the NFL would love to have, even with the big contracts.
Yeah, Hurts is an interesting one because going into last year, when something really stands out, I'll think of it a year later. And going into last year, and I touched on this with Sando a little bit when he was doing his quarterback tiers, is that Hurts last season was, okay, he's the best in the NFC. And there really wasn't a lot of pushback. And maybe it felt a little bit early. They're just coming off of the Super Bowl, though. You knew you loved the offensive line, the weapons, and all that kind of stuff. I do think he had 2 significant injuries just based on the way he was running around there towards the end last season. So I think it's worth at least bringing it up. But it probably feels like Hurts being challenged as the top NFC guy and being in this next group probably makes a little bit more sense than just Hurts is going to be a top 5 quarterback for the next decade. Maybe he will be, but it felt like it was more of an agreed upon assumption going into 23 than this year.
Yeah, and the hardest thing with the quarterbacks is looking at the supporting cast. And if you take them out of that environment, if you take Jalen Hurts away from A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and this offensive line, what does it look like? On the other hand, the coaching was terrible last season. So maybe, if he got with one of these great play callers, maybe it looks different. So that was definitely a tough one with him. Jordan Love, I have 6th on the list where I'm sure people will say, give me a break. He's been good for half a season, but he's another guy I'm just like, quarterbacks, if I see it, I'm just like, I'm going to go all in. I'll be wrong a year later, but I believe what I saw from Jordan Love.
Trevor Lawrence is an interesting one. It feels like his stock has never been lower. Last year was not great, but whenever I run myself through an exercise, you go, okay, what do you think is more likely? Like that's just a down year, and he ends up being probably one of these franchise guys, not necessarily in the top 5, but flirting with the top 10 most of the next 10 years of his career. Like that still seems far more likely to me than a number where we'll say, wow, he got paid just like the rest of those guys, and he's just not even close, even though last year it was not heading in the right direction. But I guess I'm defaulting towards optimism with him more. And sometimes I wonder why I am, but I am.
Yeah, part of it probably has to do with what we all thought of him as a draft prospect, but I'm with you. Last year is so explainable to me. The guy had 4 different injuries. He lost more, EPA on drops than any other quarterback in the NFL, which is just one metric we can look at. But basically, he was killed by drops last year. They got horrible turnover luck. It's like all this stuff that you say this usually doesn't translate from one season to the next. So I've got the Jaguars in the playoffs. If I had to pick like a sleeper MVP, I think he's like plus 3,000. I mean, some of the names ahead of him, I couldn't believe it. I kind of think he's going to have a bounce back year, even though you're right. I do think we should adjust what we thought of him when he came into the league to what he is now. We have several years of evidence, but I still think he's going to be really good.
Okay. The non-quarterbacks, how many?
Yeah, this next group is kind of the non-quarterback studs where you have Myles Garrett, Micah Parsons, Justin Jefferson, and Nick Bosa was my next group. And just edge rushers on the, when they're in their prime and they're available. We saw it with Khalil Mack several years ago. Those guys tend to bring back a huge haul in a trade. Justin Jefferson, we'll probably have a discussion when we get to the wide receivers. Is he in his own tier? I still think Hall of Fame, future Hall of Famer, 25 years old, can take over a game. I still have him in there in kind of that next tier for the non-quarterbacks.
Okay. The edge guys, all this makes sense. There's not really any pushback. I think TJ Watt not being in this conversation, though, that has to do with the age where, Garrett's 28, Watt's 30, Parsons 25, Jefferson 25, and Bosa's still only 26. So it's not the player. That has to be an age thing for TJ to not be in this group of the other edge guys, correct?
No doubt. Yeah, he's entering his age 30 season, which is not late. I still think he'd get a massive haul if he were available via trade, but just bumped him down a little bit from those guys who are all still in their 20s.
Who was the biggest riser from where you did this, halfway through the season last year?
Yes, the biggest, you know what? I'm looking at it now. I think it's probably Kyle Hamilton, who I have 18th actually, it was probably Jordan Love, but non-quarterbacks, I think it's Kyle Hamilton, who I think has emerged as one of the best defensive players in football, and he's on a rookie contract, and you can use it. I think the positionless football thing is generally overstated. Most guys can't do that. He's one of the guys who can do that, and he was so disruptive last year that I just thought, man, on that contract, he's one of the most valuable trade assets in the NFL.
You have Will Anderson 23rd overall. Is that because of the age and contract? I mean, it's not like Will Anderson isn't really good, but I guess when I saw that, I went, wow, there's only 22 guys. That's a no.
Yeah, the rookie contract for him, an edge guy who I think his game kind of resembles TJ Watt. Like if the Texans called up the Steelers and said Will Anderson for TJ Watt, I think the Steelers are doing that. They're saying we're getting a guy who's 7 years younger on a rookie contract versus TJ Watt. So yeah, the rookie contract guys who were rookies last year played really well. They're always going to be really high on this list, especially if they play a premium position.
Who was the biggest drop?
Some guys dropped completely out. So I'm trying to think who those guys potentially would be. There might be just guys because of injuries or whatever the case may be. You know who was I know you didn't ask me this, but I'm doing the old trick where you answer the question. What do you think Brock Purdy gets? So today, if the 49ers say Brock Purdy is available, there's some, it's not an injury, it's nothing. Do you think teams in the NFL would look at it and say, we can take him, put him in our ecosystem, and he's going to be really good? Or do you think they would say, no way, he's got Shanahan, he's got those weapons, we're not giving up anything for him? Because I kind of had him in the middle of this list. I had no idea what to do with him. You could make the argument, Sheil, he should be up there with Hurts. So some could make that argument based on the numbers, or you could say he shouldn't be on this list at all. Like no one's going to believe they can do with Purdy what Shanahan did with Purdy. So I have him 61 in this same tier with Kyler Murray and Anthony Richardson. Basically quarterbacks, I have no idea what to do with.
Yeah, I liked how you put those three together. It's actually probably my favorite part of the entire piece because my first instinct was, well, how could you have Kyler 2 spots close to Purdy? I mean, technically you have Purdy at 61 and Murray at 63. So you're saying Purdy's worth more, but I'm like, shouldn't that gap be more considering Murray's contract, considering his injury history? But it really is this unknown group. I mean, Richardson's unknown because he played 4 games. So,
Yeah.
we'll see. And then you think, okay, well, if Purdy's got into a Super Bowl, like how could you even compare him? On top of the fact that contractually, unless the Niners could do it a year early if they wanted to. Um, I don't know if they will. But he's under contract for 2 more years. We know his average annual salary isn't even 7 figures. So I mean, I would agree. I would have him higher than the other two, and you do. But because they're all together, my first thought was that doesn't make any sense. But I actually don't really have an answer for you. I mean, I would
Yeah.
rather have Purdy than the other two guys. As simple as that. Maybe I think there should be a gap in there, but you don't have the gap really.
Yeah, no, it's he was probably the hardest guy on the entire list. Anthony Richardson, same thing. Guys barely played, but where he got drafted, he still has 3 years left on that rookie contract. I think teams would say, yeah, we'll give up a first for the possibility of what Anthony Richardson could be. So those guys were tough, and I didn't put any rookies on the list until they play a game.
Right. Is McDuffie? Did you feel like you ended up having him a little low at 69, corner for Kansas
Maybe.
City?
Yeah. I had him in that tier where guys on their rookie contract. Yeah, I think there's definitely a case for putting him higher given what he's shown so far.
Yeah, and this exercise, like you're the guy that puts together the 100 names or so here, and then it's like, hey, you had this guy 72. I really think he should have been 67. You're like, okay, cool. Like, like,
Yeah.
so you totally disagree with what I did. So what are you actually saying here? Trying to think, anyone that wasn't on this that you wanted to put down, but you just felt like, okay, and again, you have the no rookie rule, which will be updated halfway through the season. So we can't be looking for rookies here, even if we think that there's a rookie that was taken that we liked in the preseason. We just all are going to like Caleb Williams. Like if he's on this and you were trying to trade for him right now, he might be 10th.
Yeah. Yeah, he'll I think be in the top 20 or whatever midway through the season when I do the update. One guy who I think could make a monster leap, almost a Kyle Hamilton like leap, Derek Stingley on the Texans. I think when he played, he was so good last year, and I think if he stays healthy, which he has not been able to do so far, so I left him just off. He was probably the hardest omission, but I think if he stays healthy, he's a guy who could go from not being on to all of a sudden rookie contract, one of the best corners in the NFL, shut down, cover guy, really high on this list. So yeah, he's a guy that was hard to leave off.
Let's run through the top 5 then. All right. So we did this last year. Sheil and I had our top 5 players, these positions, unless it was just the O-line grouping, which we weren't going to start sitting there and naming guards and tackles, which may seem unfair. And I couldn't tell you that you're wrong about that. But looking through the quarterbacks here, why don't you start first, and I'll just cover up. We'll see if we have any disagreements.
Yeah, I've got Mahomes 1, Allen 2, Burrow 3, Lamar 4, and I have CJ Stroud 5. So just real quick, Burrow and Lamar, if you want to flip flop them, I had, that was basically a coin flip for me. And then the 5th spot was tough. I looked at Stroud, I looked at Herbert, I looked at Jordan Love. Ultimately, I was just like, who do I think is going to be the best out of those guys this year? And I ended up going with Stroud.
I love the Stroud conversation that Sando presented to us when we were doing the QB tiers, because to put him up that high, you feel like, okay, you're breaking the rule of like, let me just see a second year before I have you ahead of everybody else other than the 4 guys. By the way, we have the exact same 4
Okay.
in order. I really don't know going into this year. I don't think anyone is necessarily like, I think you could just go Mahomes and then Allen, and now the conversation starts. I really feel that way. And, we'll see with Allen if the momentum carries over from last year, because the playoff numbers, despite the disappointment, like my argument with Allen is, okay, he's losing to the guy that may end up being the best ever of all time. And he's putting up big numbers in these games for the most part. So you look at his overall playoff resume and what his numbers are, what Lamar Jackson's are, like that's the tiebreaker, depending, even if you like Lamar better and you argue the 2 MVPs. So Burrow feels like if he's hurt this year, he's not going to be on this list going into it next year. Right. And back to the Sando point on CJ, he brought up a good point that makes it sound like you're maybe arguing against CJ being fifth or being a tier one quarterback, which he wasn't in his exercise. But maybe they do have better weapons than we thought. Maybe D'Amico is that good of a coach. Maybe the play calling and all these different things, like maybe this was a much better situation for a rookie quarterback than we're ever used to seeing. Because in the beginning, this team's going to be in the playoffs. Like a rookie, he's going to continue to put up these numbers. So I don't have any problem with that. I guess I still feel like Herbert has become the modern day Matthew Stafford, where I watch a really good quarterback on Sundays, and I think everything else around him has been generally disastrous the last 3 years. So he now has become the target for people that like to maybe just go, oh, well, if he's that good, how come all of these different things? I'm like, actually, I do think he's that good. And a lot of the stuff proves out that he is. And the defense and special teams is the thing that's pulling down the team collectively. And sometimes that just happens. So I didn't love it. If CJ had 2 years like this, maybe CJ's my fifth quarterback, but I guess I'm still holding out at least one more year with Herbert.
Yeah, my defense for Stroud, the point you made there is he had the most injured offensive line in the NFL. No team, I think, if you look at some of the advanced stat stuff, like had a more injured offensive line in like the last 20 years. And so to do that with their run game was terrible. I think they had a bottom 5 run game in the NFL when you look at efficiency. So I thought in those circumstances to do what he did, I saw it. I'm with you on Herbert. It's just like, to me, it's just kind of like it's a fatigue having that conversation still. And this year he's got nothing around him. So it's like, we're not going to reach a resolution. So I'm like, check back with me after, 2025 and I'll feel good. But I still believe in Herbert, no doubt about it.
All right. Running back. This is the worst thing I did, I think, in all of these last year. I guess I was just going with expecting McCaffrey to be hurt. So therefore I went Chubb. It wasn't like egregious because I put McCaffrey second. It feels egregious now. I will not make that same mistake, but you go first.
Yeah, I've got McCaffrey 1, Breece Hall 2, Bijan Robinson 3, Saquon 4, and Jahmyr Gibbs 5. Running back is a young man's game. It's hard for me if you're entering, 29, 30. It's just like those guys come with so much risk. So yeah, I've got 3 guys here who are on their rookie deals, and then McCaffrey and Saquon as the veterans who still have some good years left.
Okay. Bijan was one of our points of contention last year because you just had him on it.
Yeah.
Before he had ever played. I was like, can you do that? And you did it. Do whatever you want. Here he probably had what we'd consider a disappointing rookie year based on his talent and expectations. Everybody's blamed the coaches that are not there now. So I have McCaffrey, and I have I have Gibbs second.
I like it. I love Gibbs.
I have Bijan third. Now, I still think Bijan should have gone ahead of Gibbs in the draft. I'm not going to regurgitate all my running back draft arguments that we've done for years and years. And so I went, McCaffrey, Gibbs, Bijan, then Hall. And, I thought about Henry.
Yeah.
But because I had, maybe it's my stubbornness of last year, because Chubb only played 2 games. I think he's good enough that you can't just take him out of the top. Like, fine, you want to take him out of the top 5 because he's hurt, but like maybe we should give him the benefit of the doubt, still be a top 5 running back and healthy after missing basically an entire season. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, no, I love Chubb. It's just the injury. I don't know, running backs who have an injury that serious where he's not going to be out there to start the season, that makes me a little nervous, where I was like, I don't know if I can have him on here this year. And then the other guy, Breece Hall, when I was preparing for this, everything you look at suggests that give this guy some level of competence with the offensive line and the quarterback, and he can be an absolute monster. Like, he led every running back in plays of 20 plus yards last year when you look at receptions and carries, more than Christian McCaffrey, where I'm like, that can't be true, but it's true. He was top 5 in yards after contact. He was top 5 if you look at like when they hit 20 miles per hour. So he's just a complete back, where I wonder if we're doing this exercise before next season. I wouldn't be surprised if we had him number 1.
Okay. I know on the fantasy side of things, I mean, he's basically the number 2 overall pick here, but that's not exactly what we're doing. All right, receivers, Jefferson, and then who?
Tyreek Hill 2, CeeDee Lamb 3, AJ Brown 4, and Jamar Chase 5. This one was hard. You leave off Amon-Ra St. Brown. You leave off, I did, Devontae Adams, Garrett Wilson, who I think is going to have a monster year. You can Puka Nakua. I mean, what he did as a rookie. So there are a lot of guys you can choose from, but those were my 5.
Okay. I'm going to go Jefferson as well, then Hill, then CeeDee, then Chase, A.J. Brown.
Okay. Same 5.
Devontae Adams not on this group anymore, huh?
I know. It just, God, get him a quarter. But that really backfired, that trade for everyone involved, including us having to watch him with that Raiders team. Maybe he'll get traded before the trade deadline in season to a team with a quarterback, and we can put him back on there. He absolutely could be on there. There's no doubt about it.
Okay, tight ends.
I still have Travis Kelce first. I watched what everyone else did with Kelce, and then I was looking at it, and I'm like, he was second in receiving yards among tight ends last year. He was first in first downs among tight ends. He's the number 1 target on his team. If it's third down in the playoffs and you need a bucket, I'm still going to him. So until he falls off the map, I'm going with Travis Kelce, number 1. George Kittle, number 2. Sam Laporta, number 3, who he could be 1 at this time next year. Mark Andrews, 4. And then I appeased the hipsters a little bit with 5. Let's go with Trey McBride, number 5. Just, in there, Arizona, no one watching last year unless you're doing fantasy. He was awesome last year. It came down to McBride or Dalton Kincaid for me. And every number I looked at, I'm like, McBride was better than him last year. So I like both those guys, but I threw the Cardinals, threw McBride a bone there.
Okay. So Hawkinson at this point off of yours because of the injury?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I overweight the injuries. Yeah, but yeah, that was really the only reason why he could be on there if he's healthy.
Yeah, it looks like this week it was updated to a week 5 return. So we have the same top 4. I didn't expect that we were both going to have Andrews. Andrews, statistically missing some games, is not going to hold up to the previous season. You could say it's actually been like 2 years since he's had that great statistical season. I go with Andrews just based on watching it and thinking he seems like he's still awesome at tight end and a huge part of what they're doing. And we'll be curious to see what it looks like in the red zone now with Lamar as an option, Henry as an option, Zay Flowers clearly being, I think he might end up being the most talented receiver, the most productive receiver that Lamar is going to have. And I know the playoff game was incredibly disappointing for a couple different things with Zay in that game. But we have the same top 4. Yeah. And I love that we both have Andrews. And I just kept Hawkinson there because he's coming back at some point. I just think he has to be in the top 5 conversation.
Yeah, no doubt. He's, in terms of well-rounded tight ends, he's right there. And then with Andrews, like you mentioned, he has to be the guy. He's had to be the guy for their offense. It's not like they've, Kittle's numbers were better than him last year. You could make the case for Kittle, no doubt. But how do you differentiate between a guy who's got Debo, Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk on his team, and then Andrews, who for many years, he's just, like you said, been their number 1 receiving option. So I gave him a little bump there and thought he still deserved to be in there.
O-line, getting in there, doing the dirty work.
That's right.
Flip
this for social, right?
Right. Yeah. This one's a little tougher. And as soon as you announce whatever it is, you can understand the arguments outside of it. But I looked at some of the grading stuff, and I just look around. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend like, the way their guards closed off the interior, that you're absolutely nuts. So this is a bit of an assumption on my part. So I'll just admit to it here. What did you go with? Because we both had Philly last year as number 1.
Yeah. I'll give Brandon Thorne a shout out. He's like the O-line guru who I don't have an opinion on the O-line until I read his stuff because he's awesome at it. I've got the Lions number 1, the Chiefs number 2, the Eagles number 3, the Colts 4, and the Cowboys 5. And I honestly didn't feel that great about any of these. I mean, the Chiefs are starting a rookie left tackle. The Eagles are going to a season without Kelce, and they've got Mekhi Becton starting at right guard. The Colts at this time last year, we thought their offensive line sucked, and then they had a great season. So I'm like, oh, maybe they are good. And then the Cowboys are probably starting 2 rookies on their offensive line. So this was, I flirted with the Jets a little bit. I thought about the Browns, but they've got injuries. So this was a tough one.
Yeah, everybody seems to agree that Detroit is the best. I don't know that I read anything anywhere. And this is the combination of name recognition and looking at grades and seeing the people that you trust to do a better job. Certainly you do a better job than I do, and the other people that you're even talking about here. But it felt like Detroit was a consensus number one. I kept Philly there, even though Juergens is in at center. He's only played 45 snaps in the position. The Colts probably have the best tackle pair in the NFL. Cleveland's an interesting one because I think on talent alone, you can make an argument for two. But when you started talking about Houston's offensive line injuries, when you look at just the top end talent that wasn't playing for the Browns and they still found a way to miraculously kind of like, just even be on the radar at the end of the year, I put them down at 4. And I, like you, I thought about Atlanta with the grades of some of their individual players being terrific. I think Lidstrom had the best run blocking grade of any interior lineman. Kansas City, I went with them 5, even though we all watched the nightmare of Taylor at tackle.
Yeah.
So maybe the rest of it I think is so good. And there's also an unfair advantage that they're not going to be as exposed because Mahomes is just going to figure out how to adjust. It's like the Brady stuff. If there was a certain year where the offensive line didn't feel like it was as strong in other years, then he would just adapt his game for whatever deficiencies they had. So putting the Chiefs 5th feels like cheating a little bit, but it's less of an assumption than putting the Jets at 5.
Yeah, the Chiefs' interior is awesome. You mentioned it, Jawan Taylor, I think, had 19 penalties last year at right tackle, which is a insane amount. And then a rookie left tackle. So everything with the Chiefs is so hard other than Mahomes is awesome. It's like you take some of these players and you put them in a different environment with a different quarterback. Well, how good are they actually? But yeah, I think their interior is really good. But for the second straight year, they've got a questioned offensive tackle.
Okay, edge guys. This group is, I think I hated doing it last year. Whenever I did it, I was like, it's just going to be wrong. And now I did it again this year and I feel like it's wrong, but it just speaks to, we're having the exact same conversation 12 months later when it comes to this position.
Yeah, it's stacked. You could have probably 12 guys have a case for being in the top 5. I went with Micah Parsons first, Myles Garrett second, Nick Bosa third, TJ Watt fourth, and Max Crosby fifth. And one thing about Crosby and why I've got him in there, he never comes off the field. He played 384 more snaps than any other defensive lineman over the last 3 seasons. That's the equivalent of 6 more games. And so, like, you have Max Crosby, your depth, you don't have to worry about it as much because he never comes off the field. Other guys come in on 3rd down, they're fresh. He's already out there on 1st and 2nd down. So I just feel like he deserves to be recognized for that. It's like an old school mentality where he's just like, yeah, I can handle playing 90% of the snaps. I don't need a breather. I'm good. So he definitely deserves, in my opinion, to be in the top 5.
Same 5, different order: Garrett, Watt, Parsons, Crosby, Bosa. But it almost sounds like you're making an argument for Crosby to be even higher.
It's funny because then you look at like the rate stuff and it's like, well, the other guys are getting, hitting the quarterback at a higher rate. So you gotta mix the two. Like, all right, you're getting more snaps out of him. The other guys are more efficient. Are they more efficient because they're fresher? I still feel good about those top 4. I mean, those are all guys, and Crosby can do it too. But man, those guys are all like in the defensive player of the year conversation year after year after year. They've all been just so productive.
Okay, so same 5, different order. Interior defensive lineman, the first time without AD in the middle there, Aaron Donald retiring. I've got Chris Jones, Dexter Lawrence, Quinnen Williams. Then I think I just had a bunch of different names. Like, I still like Jeffrey Simmons a lot, but I know that he didn't grade out as well. But I kind of feel like as far as like game wrecking from the inside and his versatility and like what he could do, it's still worth keeping him on this list. For Derek Brown was another one. So I'm kind of curious. I don't know that I've even finalized this one because it's just harder because you can't just go by stats with these guys.
Yeah, we've got the same top 3: Chris Jones, Quinnen Williams, and Dexter Lawrence. I gave Justin Matabuke from the Ravens some love. He was just 11 and a half sacks at defensive tackle last year when he was lined up as a defensive tackle. That was the most in the NFL. So I think he was kind of like an under the radar good player. And then he broke out last year for the Ravens and then got a big contract. And then 5, the guy who's going to line up next to Max Crosby, which is going to be a lot of fun. And that's Christian Wilkins. Always been good against the run. pass rush really took a step in the right direction last season. And like Crosby, never comes off the field. Those two guys, they played 90% of the snaps. Again, very rare for a defensive tackle to be as reliable and have that kind of conditioning, that kind of stamina. So I gave Christian Wilkins the 5th spot. But yeah, man, the other guys, Simmons, Brown, you mentioned it, DeForest Buckner, Kenny Clark, Jonathan Allen, Christian Barmore, if he's healthy, Ed Oliver, I thought had a really good season. And then the guy who I think at this time next year, I think Jalen Carter is going to be on this list. I feel confident about nothing with the Eagles this year, about what they're going to be, except for the fact that Jalen Carter is going to be an absolute beast. So I think he's a guy to keep an eye on, make this list next season.
Yeah, I don't know what it was, because if you look at his grades over the first and second half of the season, he was on a tear to start, and maybe it was just people getting used to him and then him having to figure it out. But I don't think you're wrong. Like, he's already a top 10 guy. Brown is an interesting one because we're looking at somebody who's just probably the best run defender in the game.
Yeah.
But Carolina was such a mess. It's probably a lot of people listening, probably, not even thinking about him. I think Cam Hayward's still probably in the conversation of the Steelers, despite the fact that he's been around a long time at 35 years old, but he's still really, really good. So I like Matabuke. I'm going to probably put him down 5th then after Simmons. All right.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, corners.
Corners, I feel good. The 1-2, you could just flip flop them every year, or one of us pick one or the other. I think Sauce Gardner, I have one, and Patrick Surtain too. I think they're both awesome. Either one of them could have the belt for best corner in the NFL. 3 is a personal favorite. That's Jalen Johnson from the Bears. I thought he was awesome last year. Man coverage. When he played man coverage last year, opponents completed 3 of 8 passes for 32 yards on 101 snaps of man coverage for Jalen Johnson last year. And he's awesome in zone too. He's physical, he tackles, he does it all. 4, I have a guy I know you love, Trent McDuffie. We talked about him earlier. I've got him on this list. And 5 was tough. I'm going to try to call my shot a little bit with this one and go with Devon Witherspoon and predict that by the end of the year, we're going to be saying he's one of the best corners in the NFL. Now, he'll play nickel. He'll be lined up all over the place. But I just think what I saw last year with Mike McDonald, with that Seahawks scheme, I think he's going to have a big year.
Okay. We have the same, because I think Surtain is somebody that he graded out so spectacularly 2 years ago that maybe he's being judged against that. But then there was some other coverage stuff where he was still off the charts, but maybe the overall metrics weren't as good. I mean, it depends on really what you want to look at here. Yeah. But watching, just thinking back to the games of like, hey, that guy is just killing it out there. Sauce is 1, Surtain is 2 for me. I love Jalen Johnson. I think he's like one of the most underrated players in the entire league.
Agreed.
And I've got McDuffie 4, and I gave the 5th spot to Jalen Ramsey.
Okay. Legacy award, lifetime achievement.
Do you not like my legacy plays?
No, he's still good. Yeah, he's still good. I'm good with that. You have to knock him off, clearly until he's out of there because he's had such an awesome career.
Okay, safeties.
I've got Kyle Hamilton takes over the number 1 spot this year for me. Minkah Fitzpatrick coming off maybe a little bit of a down year, but it's still awesome. I've got him number 2. Antoine Winfield Jr., what the Bucs did with him last year, maybe the best playmaker in the NFL at safety. He was awesome last year. Jesse Bates has shown he can do it in different schemes. He signs with the Falcons last season, has a great year after so many good seasons with the Bengals. And then 5, Javon Holland of the Miami Dolphins. Those are my 5. I'm curious. There's a guy on here that sort of fits the Derwin James. I meant to say fits the Jalen Ramsey.
Yeah.
The Jalen Ramsey mold. Yeah.
Good instincts, because I thought about it. I thought about it, and I don't know. It feels like you can make an argument to be like, are we judging him against his peak? If the safety class weren't as deep as it were, I'd probably put him 5th. I probably still would.
Yeah.
But it is really deep. I mean, you can make an argument for Winfield over Hamilton, but I too, like you, love the versatility of Hamilton. I love those moments where I'm like, I cannot believe this guy can do all of these things at this body type. So maybe I'm falling too much in love with that, but I still have Hamilton 1. I put Winfield 2. PFF actually ranks Winfield 1. Jesse Bates has to be on everybody's top 5, a free agent signing that actually worked out. I have Minka 4, and then I 2, even though Holland was down on snaps last year. I mean, look, would I fight to the death about some of this? No, not on this one. But I just think Holland's a baller when he's out there. So pretty simple. Baller alert.
No doubt. Holland's awesome. McKinney, I like. Packers signed him. Marcus Williams of the Ravens is really good. And Derwin James, I do think new scheme, new coaching. He could be a guy we're talking about middle of this season. Wow, he looks way better than he did last season. So, I'm not giving up on him.
Okay, last one, and it's my favorite. Former guest here on the show who did one of the most impressive jobs ever as a guest because of the disconnect with our technology at the time. Fred Warner starts the list, and then the list really starts after Fred. And I don't know who could have anyone other than Fred number 1 here.
Yeah. I mean, I put Warner just for what you mentioned, battling through that adversity as a podcaster. I mean, we can relate with that. So he's got to be.
Do you want to tell me like he's gonna when there's chaos around him and it's the fourth quarter and they don't know what's going on, they can't figure out anything. He's gonna stay cool and calm. I thought that before we had him on. Now I know it.
Yeah, Wi-Fi's down. He just mentally
he was guessing my questions as the audio and video got cut off, and then answering questions that he assumed I was asking. I mean, we don't talk. He's playing like a couple moves ahead of everybody.
No doubt. He's had the rep, so he deserves to be number 1. Big gap between him and everyone else as it is every year. I think Roquan Smith is pretty entrenched there as 2 for me, where I didn't have to think about anyone else. And then if you are a fan of a team and you think, man, our linebackers stink, you're not alone. I mean, you look, it was hard to get to 5. I don't know how you felt about it. I was like, yeah, Warner, Roquan Smith, awesome. Okay, now where am I going with this? So I gave Demario Davis, who despite being 34, 35 years old, still getting it done. It's kind of like you had earlier with Jalen Ray. I'm like, until someone knocks him off, and I don't see other great young linebackers, I have him 3. CJ Mosley, very strange career, was awesome with the Ravens, signed a big deal with the Jets, sat out the COVID season. He was awesome last year. I thought CJ Mosley with the Jets. I have him there at 4. And then 5, it came down to a bunch of guys for me. Let's give the Jets some love. I'm going to give Quincy Williams the 5th spot here. Just he wants to punish you when he hits you, which I love. And last year, the question always with him was coverage. He led all linebackers in PBUs, pass breakups last season. So a couple other guys you could definitely have in there at 4 or 5. But that Jets linebacker tandem is really, really good. So I gave them both spots.
Wow, 2 Jets on there. I'll admit, when I watch them, when they're rolling defensively with those 2 guys, I'd say over the last couple of years, they stand out. They totally stand out. Top 3, we have the same. Demario's still on mine. Milano would have been on it if he weren't injured now going into the year. So that's a huge problem. Milano to me is a top 5 guy, but I can't put him on it now with the injury. So I'll go CJ, and then I'll close it out with somebody coming back healthy after playing through injury last year, Nick Bolton, the Chiefs.
Yeah. Him and Levante David were the 2 of the other ones where I thought, all right, these guys have a good case to still be on there for sure.
Okay, when's the first pod coming out?
Later today. We got a Ringer NFL show we're recording later today. We got the Ringers Philly special going strong, and you mentioned it. We got the trade value rankings on the ringer.com, and then a Tuesday column I'm writing every week this season. So you can check that out starting next week.
Thanks as always, Sheil. Talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks for having me.